after the gala. Thank you all for coming to Night Track Friday night, CLA 2024. We are here to talk about how to open your own mic night at your library, your open mic night at your library. And if you stick around afterwards, hopefully we have some creative and talented people who would like to present and share some of their own talents. A little bit about us. I am John Andersen. I am Principal Librarian at Anaheim Public Library. I work with adult services. I've been doing adult services for quite a bit of time. Is it not going? There we go. I'm John Andersen. I've been doing adult services for quite a while. I've done everything from being a dungeon master to doing California book to action. I've done adult literacy, but open mic night is quite close to my heart as music is one of my hobbies. When I'm not at work, I do moonlight on the weekends as a drummer in a Pearl Jam tribute band. And this is my counterpart here.
And my name is Donald Hilliard. I am a Library Technology Systems Administrator at Anaheim Public Library, and also the co-host with John of our monthly open mic night. Music is also one of my passions. In my spare time, I'm a singer-songwriter, and I do performances on at open mic nights, and in fact, I'm working on my first album, first ever.
Does anyone have an open mic night at their library already? Awesome. So you're going to learn along with us. Okay. Don, why don't you tell a little bit about the history of open mic nights at Anaheim?
Sure. So the open mic nights actually started in 2018, April in 2018, as part of National Poetry Month. And they were actually started by one of our very talented part-time librarians at that time, Sarah Emerson. And the first event, one of the featured speakers was the brand new Anaheim Poet Laureate, Grant Heyer. And it was very well attended right away. We had over 60 people actually at the first event. And the open mic nights continued every other month at that point, until we got to the pandemic, and of course all of our in-person programming shut down at that time. But in spite of the pandemic, we continued open mic nights with two Instagram events that had pre-recorded videos, and then a little later we had two live Zoom events. And then finally we were able to resume the in-person events the summer of 2021, and we increased to every month events in January 2022. And then our open mic nights were doing popular enough that we were one of our other smaller branches, the Euclid branch, started their own monthly open mic night, and that's been growing as well and also doing very well. So we're really happy about the support that we've gotten in the community.
So I joined Don I joined at Anaheim about 2.5 years ago, and very quickly I saw that this program was going on, and I'm like, I have to be a part of this. So I started asking my boss if I could just kind of sneak out an hour early from my normal shift to start just kind of spectating. Very quickly decided I need to be part of this as well. So thankfully Don needed a counterpart, and once we found out that CLA would take us for this seminar, we started kind of congealing our thoughts together and trying to think of what made a successful open mic night. So we're going to go over these key points here, starting off with what we've boiled down to like 3 key tenets for success. And inclusivity, positivity, community. We think that those are like the 3 key things in everything that we do to make things run smoothly and make it successful, we think kind of boil down to one of those three. Inclusivity. People and performance is the most important. It's great to have an open mic night, but it's even better to have a diverse and wide swath of talent and mediums and, of course, different types of people. We are open to having poetry and prose, acting, spoken word, singing, music, comedy, dancing, magic acts, improv. We've had all of it. Some of it's been great, some of it's been questionable. And also, we want to also make sure that our spectators feel welcome too. We always want to make sure that we're cognizant of what we can do to improve accessibility. Anaheim right now is actually going through a big initiative to try to improve our accessibility to all people, and that can be just as small as making sure that you have space for wheelchair access, making sure that you have mics. We have plenty of people who come in and they say like, oh, it's okay, I have a mom voice or I have a teacher's voice, but not everybody can hear you as well as you think you can, so having a good microphone is always great. If you have the ability to have speech to text, that's even better, but any ADA accommodations you can do is only going to improve your clientele. And again, spectators are people too. You should always go in with the idea that any spectator is a potential future presenter. And they're going to come in there, they're going to see how open and warm and inviting the group is, and maybe they'll finally feel confident enough to come up and share. No one likes to perform to an empty house, so you want to make sure that even those people are welcomed. And then before and after the show, you want to make sure that you engage with performers and everybody alike. You want to make sure that you're facilitating that warm, inviting environment to try to eke out their hidden talents. So positivity. We want to make sure that you set the tone. Just like I said, host responsibility is to impart on everyone that your venue is a safe space, that all mindsets, content, and skill levels are welcome and encouraged. It's important that as soon as someone comes up and they bare their soul, they might be shaking at the podium, but you got to get up there, you got to be the first one to applaud. You got to be the applaud sign, and you have to smack the microphone. You want to make sure that you're providing important positive feedback to everybody. You might not be able to really grasp what they're talking about, but even the smallest little bit of positivity can really help them boost their confidence and invite them and encourage them to come back. And another big part of setting that positive tone is to make sure you set ground rules. We always have a prepared set of kind of like opening remarks that we have, and it's very specific about making sure that inappropriate derogatory content is not being used and will not be tolerated. And anything that's hateful or inflammatory, and we even make a point to say if there are any minors in the room that you try to make your content age appropriate, which is actually kind of comical sometimes when people have this really passionate poetry and they stop to say like mother effers or halfway through.
Creative word substitution.
Yes. These Monday to Friday snakes on this Monday to Friday plane.
And by the way, the handouts which you have through the app, and also we have paper copies up here if you would like. One of them is our just kind of opening remarks.
And the last of those three major key tenets is community. You want to really make sure to embrace your locals. You want to make sure that, because your locals are the people who are most likely to attend, they're going to come to their home library. Make time before and after, make sure they get a chance to mingle. They might be neighbors meeting for the first time. Nobody goes to third spaces anymore, so this is an opportunity for adults to meet in person. And word of mouth is honestly the best advertising for this. You can put as many flyers up as you want, you can put as many social media posts out, but people talking to people is still what's going to bring people to the building. Ask library regulars. If someone's just sitting on the computer and it's 5 minutes to the beginning of your program, go and walk around the building. Ask people like, hey, do you have anything you want to share? Do you have a song in your heart? Do you have a poem that you've never read to anybody? Come and share it with everybody. And don't forget your own team. There's a lot of hidden gems in your own staff, especially when you're getting the open mic night off the ground for the first time. You might have a room with not quite every chair filled. It's nice to have your own staff there you might find out that they had hidden talents that you never knew about. It's great for morale, and again, you might need that attendance boost for those first couple weeks you're starting your open mic. Now Don's going to talk about what we do for registration and communication.
Okay, so again, if you you can refer to your handout for this, but having a sign-up sheet helps in several ways. It's a good way of keeping track of the order of arrival and performers. Also being able to estimate the length of performances. In other words, if you have 18 people signed up, you're going to want to try to limit them to maybe 4 minutes. If you have 6 people signed up, you can give them much more time. The sign-up sheet, registration sheets are good also for tracking statistics, keeping track of how many performers that you had during that event, and also getting their information. So our sign-up sheet, we include place for them to put their email address, and then we've created a email list where we talk about future events, and that's a helpful way to keep the people informed about what we're doing. Also, it's a chance to give them to ask for their social media handles. So, for example, on our open mic nights, we do share the event flyers and then also some photos afterwards on Instagram. And it's, of course, the sheet is useful for last minute changes or updates. Sometimes we'll start out an event with just a handful of people, and then by the end of the event we've gotten a lot more with late arrivals, and the sign-up sheet helps to keep track of that. So, and there's what ours looks like.
And then you want to talk about the Anaheim resident column too? Right,
and for statistics, we do ask if there's residents of the city of Anaheim, and your sign-up sheet could be as simple as this, or you could do something more complicated. Moving on to marketing and social media. So we encourage you to take lots of pictures. We do let the audience know that we will be taking pictures so they can opt out if requested. We put that on our sign-up sheet, but also it's part of our announcements at the beginning of the event. So when you do post photos on social media, it gives you the opportunity to tag your presenters, and you might choose to add and follow them to help build your network. It's really amazing how active local poets are on Instagram, we found, and it's a great way of keeping in touch with them and keeping track of what they're doing. If the presenters have anything that they would like to promote, we do give the opportunity for them to share about that within their allotted time slot. And also we provide the opportunity, if they have flyers of upcoming events, to put those on our table in the room. And it's something where they can share what they're doing, and also other attendees might be interested in seeing what they're doing as well.
And just real quick, at the top screen you can see there's that arrow pointing to that poster on the wall. We kind of have this blanket poster that's always in our multi-purpose room that just says, if you're in this room, you are subject to being filmed or photographed. So that's nice to have if your administration or your board or your city legal allows it.
Now, one thing I will say about photos is we've done photos where we've done not only a picture of the featured presenter, we'll talk about features a little later, but also photos of each individual participant except those who have opted out. And some people enjoy that, but we have found that some people don't. So we've also experimented with just having pictures of the featured reader, and then maybe a group photo taken from the back of the room midway through the event, or a posed photo afterwards. So as far as what your audience might be comfortable with, just keep that in mind. Some people love the photos, some people might not. It's good to make a recognizable flyer and share it with your mailing list on bulletin boards. Of course, it could be in the library, it could be your local Starbucks, and of course on your social media account. And that's one of our flyers. You can see this this very nice marketing flyer that was designed by our wonderful communications team. Another important aspect of marketing is reaching out to your local poetry and art community. Who city and county poet laureates are excellent for that. They can not only would make excellent presenters, but can recommend other poets, and might be interested in not only attending, but possibly partnering and cross-promoting. So for example, on the screen, you'll see 3 examples of that. The first one is a local musician, local indie musician who actually has an international following, and he started coming to our open mics because he lives just about 5 minutes away. The middle photo is an employee of our local museum. Museo is the name of it. It's a museum. And then finally, we have a picture of our latest Anaheim Poet Laureate, Camille Hernandez. So John will talk more about MC responsibilities.
Okay. So I am not a dyed-in-the-wool MC. As you might have heard earlier, I typically like to have a drum kit in front of me when I'm in front of people. I still get the little butterflies and I get nervous, so you kind of just have to get out of that comfort zone, and you have to be the warm, and you have to be the energetic MC. You got to get out there. You have to greet everybody. You have to do the disclaimer that I had mentioned. You got to cover the rules. You have to run the show. You got to let them know that you're boss, right? One thing that we found that's really helpful, and it seems like a small thing, but it really does help. When you're calling out the presenter, you're going down your list. You got that roster that we showed you. So you finish your disclaimer. You say who's coming up next. It's a small thing, but also tell who's on deck after them. So many times we go to tell the person that they're coming up next, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then they go, "Hold on a second." They got to grab their guitar. They got to hold on. I got to tune in. I got to get my strap, and then can I plug in there? And so something that should have taken 10 seconds really takes 5 minutes. So just let the person know that they're on deck. Encourage frequent applause. Like I said, you got to be the applause sign at your open mics. You got to keep it positive. You got to keep it upbeat. Sometimes, if you get a lot of poets, it can get a little listless. You gotta keep the energy up. Yeah, and don't forget to take photos. It's really nice to have 2 MCs, because I mentioned this later, but it's really nice to have 2 people on deck, because then you can kind of swap out responsibilities. But for MCs, you got to keep an eye on the clock. Usually you have a budgeted amount of time. We usually budget about 2 hours. Ours usually run from about 5 to 7, but the building closes at 7. We try to encourage signups a little bit before, give them a little time to mingle. But you have to keep an eye on the clock. So when you have your roster, you got to do some quick division. We usually allot about 4 to 6 minutes per person. If you come to an open mic night and you realize that there's maybe only 10 or 15, there's about 10 performers. You can stretch it out, but it helps to be able to kind of do that quick math on the fly. If you know your regulars well enough, it is really helpful, because sometimes you know that that one person who signed up might not be 4 to 6 minutes. They might have one haiku and they're done. And then the other gentleman who's right after that might want to do Freebird. And then, yeah, so that happens. So attempt to keep it fair. But it's okay as a presenter to tell someone, to wrap it up, start playing the walk-off music a little bit if they're going long, for the sake of the program. And also, yes, again, having two people is always helpful, not just for the sharing of responsibilities, but sometimes people get sick, sometimes people have vacations, sometimes you're the person in charge of the building and you have to go and close the bathrooms or something like that while the other person handles it. So having two people is always, it's nice to have a redundancy. Don, why don't you talk about our featured presenters?
Sure. So having a featured presenter with some experience or success can be a really real draw to the program. I mean, it's true that you can have the event with just participants and no feature. Our experience is that the feature adds not only to the event, but draws additional audience, people who might be interested in that featured reader. It provides an opportunity for the feature to share their story, and it might provide aspirational goal for novice presenters. So as I've said, it's helped increase our attendance. The way we like to do it is put the featured speaker on about midway through the event. Now it's possible to put the person on at the end too as the headliner. Actually, our Euclid branch does that, but we've always put at the Central Library, the main open mic night in the middle, and we find that works well. At the beginning of the event, you can just do kind of a teaser for the feature and then a more full introduction right before they come on. We'd suggest giving that person maybe 2 to 3 times the amount of time that you'd give your regular presenter. So for our featured readers, have about 15 minutes, and then our regular participants, roughly 5. Now, as far as booking tips, reach out to your local poetry community. So I mentioned city or county poet laureates make great presenters and can suggest other poets to feature. Local poetry publishers will have authors who might be interested in being features as well and would certainly be qualified. You can consider visiting other local open mic nights, and you might see talent there that you can recruit. And one incentive is you can give the feature the opportunity to sell or promote their books, or in some cases their music at the end of the event. What we even do is we have a local author display that's prominent on the 2nd floor of our central library, and when we invite the features, we will invite them to donate a copy of their book to be featured prominently in our local author collection. Now keep in mind that not all features not everyone you'd like will want to be a featured reader at an open mic night, without having any financial remuneration, but we've found that a lot, in fact, do. John will talk a little bit more about recommended equipment.
And most of this is going to be pretty straightforward. Most of it, it's common sense. It might seem weird, but it's helpful to have microphones at an open mic. Wired or wireless is not. It doesn't really matter. But it does depend on your space, of course. But make sure that your PA system is powerful enough for your room. Make sure you have the appropriate amount of mic stands and that you have extras. If you have a podium or lectern, it's good to have one of these. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but especially for a really timid first-time presenter, having a podium up here is like having a comfort security blanket, as opposed to just having like one of these straight-up mic stands that can be just really intimidating and feel like really exposed. But we usually do have a podium with a microphone, and we have at least 1 or 2 straight stands next to us. It gives them the option, and especially if they are like an acoustic guitarist, they might prefer to just stand and use that instead of being behind the lectern. Not necessary, but useful. Bring some instruments. You can get some, pretty decent acoustic guitar for $200. maybe something like a piano or a keyboard or a cajon,
Ukulele.
Ukulele, anything you can have on hand. You might get the opportunity to, to prompt someone to come up. They didn't know that they were going to perform, but since it was there, they know how to play it, they jump on. Having a variety of different types of seating is always helpful. Again, some musicians prefer to sit in a stool, some prefer to stand. You might have seen some of the pictures from earlier. Some of our authors or poets, they just prefer to get really comfy on a high stool. If you have the ability to have a projector or a screen behind you, that can be really good for visual medium. Like maybe somebody has like a funny PowerPoint that they want to slide through. But typically, we'll just have like a poster of our monthly flyer in the background, which is great because when you go to do your photos, you'll always know which program it was from because it's got the date right on it. If you have any extra music stands, that's always great so people aren't fumbling around or trying to like read it off of their phone. Make sure you manage your cables, make sure you tape them to the floor, make sure you zip tie them. You really don't want anyone tripping over cables during the middle of their really, really intense poetry.
Reusable Velcro cable covers are nice for carpeted rooms.
Yes. Be sparing with your refreshments. It's really nice to be able to offer like some snacks or some drinks in the back, but keep your presenters in mind and don't give anybody anything that's going to crinkle or crunch or be making a distraction in the middle. Some of these poems, they get really heavy, and you don't want someone just making like weird little noises in the background while someone's burying their soul. Those are all of our recommendations for a successful open mic night, but before we go, we wanted to share some of our most memorable moments from the last couple years.
Okay, so these first two photos, so our open mic night is normally an acoustic event, but one time we did have a group of teens who came with their PA systems and electric guitars and gave us nice, loud covers of some Green Day punk songs, and our audience enjoyed it. It was very fun. And then, by contrast, the second slide shows one of our regulars, duo ladies that play the recorder, and the one of them, in fact, has shared with the audience that she's over 90 years old, and it's really kind of inspirational to see them come out every month. And when we have a slow night, our 90-plus-year-old lady will even do some stand-up comedy.
They're the corniest, funniest jokes. It's so funny. So the gentleman on the left, I was talking earlier about inclusivity. Like I mentioned, Anaheim is really going through this big push. We have an accessibility committee that's really driving to expand our ADA accommodations. In fact, I have some of my committee members here with me. But while we were doing all this research, it was a very simple thing: remove some chairs from your audience to let people know that if you have a wheelchair, you were expecting them. The first night we did that, we had 2 people in wheelchairs showed up, and that never happened before. That was just like such an affirming and validating moment, and it just made my heart swell. And then the picture on the right, the gentleman at the piano, his name is Vern Nelson, and he is a local. He's a local musician, but he's also kind of like a political radical. He likes to go to the city hall and complain about all the wrongs in the city. But
journalist as well.
But he's an incredible musician. He writes his own improvisational musicals. He's just one of those like savant type of musicians, and he'll get up and he'll sing these really great songs. But the woman on the left, the flautist, she came up and she was practicing in the hallway with her music, and he just kind of came up and said, "Do you mind if I accompany you?" And she was just like, "Yeah, sure." And then they just pulled this beautiful flute piano duet out of nothing, and it was gorgeous. It was community in action. Loved it.
Okay, so this is actually one of on the left we have one of our featured but he also asked if he could bring 2 other local Anaheim poets with him to be kind of his guest poets for his feature. So we went ahead and let them do that, and it was really fun to see all 3 of them, and they were all 3 quite excellent poets in their own right.
Yeah, that was great because we were talking about the allotment that we give to our feature presenters, but he decided to kind of sublet his presentation slot to his proteges. That was what was so memorable about that one. This one for me, so the gentleman on the left, he has only come one time. He was visiting from LA. He saw that there was an open mic. He is a survivor of some of the atrocities happening on the Gaza Strip. And he wanted to come, and he had some very poignant poetry about his experiences, and he wanted to come and just tell his story and network with anyone else that might have been involved or has family involved back there. And it was just one of those just moment in times. It was heart-wrenching stuff, very much memorable for me. And on the other side of the emotional spectrum, the reason why these are blurry is not because we chose low-resolution photos, but those 2 happen to be minors, and they opted not to be photographed for our social media and everything, and at their request, I'm just kind of fuzzing their photos. But the young lady in the middle is literally one of the funniest people I've ever watched do live performances. In this one, you might see she's wearing 2 gloves, and she was doing this whole piece about Kirk and Sam and the development of big box stores, Costco and Sam, and they were talking about it as if they had just gotten high and they were coming up with a story like on the fly. Like, what if we put everything in the store and then don't tell anyone where anything is? Like, that's never gonna work. Yeah, but we'll sell hot dogs for $1.50 so they don't care. I mean, it was that kind of stuff. She's like 15 and it was great. And then this gentleman here, he came in, I thought he was gonna be, just sit in the back, kind of just be like, I don't know, just too cool for school, but he came up and the first thing he says, and he comes back probably maybe 2 out of 3 mic nights that we have, and every time he gets up, he goes, I'm not a poet or anything, I just write what I feel. And then he just proceeds to tell like the most, like, just open-hearted love stories about this girl that he's got it really bad for, and it's just so adorable. He's so vulnerable, and I just try to encourage him as much as I can to have him come back, and he's always really well received.
And finally, we have, so on the left we have Bobo Burns. He is the local indie musician that I talked about earlier, and who's become a regular at our open mic night. And what's really special about about his coming is that I've been a kind of amateur songwriter for years, and when I found out that Bobo had a recording studio at his house, which was very local, I talked to him about recording, and the end result of that was that I'm now in the process of recording my first album, which has been a long time dream. And not only that, but we pulled John, my co-host John, in as well, because decided to ask him to do some of the drumming, and it's really quite excellent drummer, I have to say. So anyway, that was something that just wouldn't have happened except for open mic night and these connections. And then finally, the last picture. So one time, the day before an open mic night, I got a call from someone who asked if they could do a marriage proposal during the open mic night, and so of course we said yes, that would be great. And so it did indeed happen, and it was something really special and moving for everyone. And of course, John and I knew it was coming, but everyone else was caught by surprise. So that was a special moment and kind of a first for us, actually.
Yeah, he recited a sonnet that he had written, and then proposed. It was a lot of gasps, but it was beautiful. We loved it. That's it for this presentation. Does anyone have any questions about open mic nights, or our open mic nights, or potentially open your own open mic nights? Pardon me? Did you have a question?
Yes, when you said you had a lot of people in poetry, has there been times that you basically, move things around and so you don't have the same type of performer, one after the other? Has that been an issue or done it, or you're supposed to respect people as they come in, they sign up, and follow that?
So the question was whether or not we move people around based on the type of presentation that they're doing, and no, we don't, because, well, for one, we don't ask them to solicit what kind of, or we don't ask them to put what kind of presentation that they're going to provide. Even if we did, I don't think we would. Their segments are so small that it's not that big of a deal. Like, even if we had 3 or 4 poets in a row, we're still only talking about 15, 20 minutes or so. And honestly, the content it varies so much. We have people talking about personal things, and then it goes to, our previous poet laureate, she is what she called herself a speculative science fiction poet, and she would do these very short form things about black holes. And so like, it's never 2 things in a row that are going to be the same. So we haven't really worried about having too much content like that, like overlapping or back to back.
Mm-hmm. And I will also add that we do like asking for performers, not just keeping it poetry only or music only, but making it available to any kind of performance, and that's, I think, added variety and interest.
I always love the stand-up comics, because if they're coming to our open mic night for stand-up comedy, you know that they're at the very beginning of their hopefully long and storied career, but it's always a little rough, but it's very entertaining. And so we've had even some that were just like downright inappropriate.
In spite of our all ages warning at the beginning.
Yeah, but it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. Any other questions? Okay. Yes.
So say, have you guys thought about it, or can you do it in a public place that maybe certain nights exclusively for adults? Or you wouldn't consider that, or you can't
Well,
do that because it's public?
You're saying, have we ever thought about doing something only for adults?
Yeah, like so the content, it's not.
We've thought of, I don't think we've ever spoken about doing that, but we really wanted to keep it inclusive. We definitely want to encourage the younger folks out there. I don't know if we would get that much of a different audience. We don't get enough people where I think we would, yeah. And, yeah.
But it's certainly something that's possible. they're looking at the local open mic nights in the community. There are some that are, bill themselves as adults only to allow for that kind of content, and certainly that's an option.
And more often than not, the content actually, I should say the age appropriateness is not really an issue. In fact, one of our regulars, she comes in with her young daughter, and while she's waiting for her turn, the daughter might be walking around or something, but by the time she gets up, the daughter's asleep. And other times, she'll get up, and sometimes the people, they'll get up and they'll be censoring themselves or having, I'm sorry, and she'll be like, it's okay, she's out, whatever. So it hasn't really been as big of an issue. It's more about just making sure that people don't go overboard with it.
And the reason I'm asking because there's I don't know how familiar you are with the area, there's a railroad museum in Capo, off the gate, and I just saw that they have an adult movie event. I'm like, oh, I just didn't think of it, always think of it as, kids go.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know, so I was just curious.
Yeah, it happens so infrequently that we haven't had to think about catering to just that demographic. But of course, every location's different, and we definitely get some material when they're talking, and we're just like, "Do we have any kids? Oh my God, yeah." There's an author who talks about her exploits in the foot fetish BDSM community, and beautiful poetry, but the content is very explicit. but she's really good at metering it. But every time she comes up, I kind of like, who do we have today? Yeah. But she's very respectful. Any other questions? Okay, great.
Well,
Go ahead.
we want to thank you for coming, and also we put our contact information up on the slides and in the slides that you can download. So if by chance you do decide to, start an open mic night, we have questions for us or would like to share your success, we'd be very interested.
And I know there's so many people that we're never going to get to all of you, but if you would like to sign up for open mic night, at least for our own statistics, go ahead and scan the code right there. That'll at least allow us to keep track. We did have at least one person, let me check again, but I know we had at least one person who was interested in performing. But Don, would you like to kick things off first?
I can do that.
So Don usually closes out our night, every night, as long as we have enough time, and occasionally we've had to boot him for time. But Don performs under the handle Acoustic Librarian, and it's not just a clever Instagram handle. He also is a musician, like he said, and he really likes to write his own music that is about his career in the library. So he's going to share a couple songs that he wrote that have to do with some subject matter that maybe you are familiar with.
Okay, this first song actually started out as technology tips for my coworkers, and at some point I thought, well, why don't I try to write a song about that? It's called Restart Your Computer. Thank you. I'll do one last song, and this one I think you will recognize the music. It's a very well-known song by a band called Semisonic, but I decided to take a few liberties with the lyrics to describe my own experience working at the library towards the end of the day. So this is called Closing Time at the Library.
I'd like to invite up Mr. James Tyner to the microphone. Yeah, right up there. And James, please introduce yourself.
Let's see. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. My name is James Tyner. I am a I'm a principal librarian of support services for Fresno County Public Library. I'm also Fresno's first poet laureate. So I have an MFA degree in creative writing. My poems are in several journals and anthologies like with The Working Poet and New America. So poetry is a passion of mine, and I love playing it with, with our jobs of being librarians. I just get exposed to so much. So during my time as poet laureate, actually the day it was announced to the media, I was told I had to write a poem. So I had to come up with something. I had about 15 minutes in the parking lot to do it. So what I'm going to read to you now is that it's been edited since, I swear. But one interesting thing about Fresno is there's a lot of poets. When I got my first book published, the check that I got, all $60 of it, basically the editor said, "Oh, you're in Poetry Light," once he got my address. So we've had at least 2 United States poet laureates. We've had current California poet laureate is a Fresno poet. So there's just a lot of interesting things going on there. In Fresno, we have a habit of beating ourselves up. So I love just to raise others up to the poetry. So this piece here is the one I wrote when I became poet laureate. I'm not used to reading on my phone, so I apologize. But the poor kids of Fresno Unified actually had to study this piece. My kids were not happy with that. So let's read this. And it's called I Am Fresno. I'm the high school kid that can't wait to get out of this town. There's nothing to do here. Nothing ever happens. Waiting for that last summer before heading out of the city. I'm the kid just back from college, moving back in with mom and dad, trying to find a job now that school's over. Back home again. Taking down old posters from the wall and putting up diplomas. I'm the couple that just bought their first house, a fixer-upper, yard golden from too much sun, their 3-year-old walking up the steps. Paint still on dad's pants from the bedroom he's just finished. I am fields of vines, grapes growing in a vast green, raisins drying on brown paper, strawberries just plucked from the field. I'm moving north, new buildings, restaurants, glass, and plastic, meeting not so far from the river, a hail of lights and traffic. I'm coming back downtown, dusting off the concrete and brick of old restaurants that have been there for years, fresh again. I am new businesses sprouting and food trucks turning up like flowers over asphalt. I'm a softball player, mitt clenched tightly, a wrestler alone on a mat, a stadium of waving red. I'm a long line of poets, words spreading through culture, through time, through classrooms, through books. I'm the owner of championships, of Pulitzers, Oscars, Tonys, struggling to win just one more thing. I'm noticing myself, finally. I'm at a family barbecue and all the children there share the same last name, the same blood, and all have different shades of skin. My father by the pool speaking Spanish to my daughter, his aged brown hand running through her wispy blonde hair. I'm a bowl of pho for breakfast, the noodles warm, broth like a hug, meat tender and fresh. I'm lula kebabs for lunch, the spice just behind the tongue. Pilaf, golden and perfect. And I'm sitting at the dinner table rolling a hot dog into a corn tortilla, boiled beans and white rice, the air growing smoky from the tri-tip barbecuing outside. And my cousin bringing in a plate of pan-fried noodles from that place down the street. I am home. I am Fresno. Thank you all so much.
And now I'm hungry again. Thank you, James. Thank you so much. We do have one more sign up. Again, if you just walked in, there's a QR code up here. Scan it if you would like to share. There's some instruments up here if you want to jump up and play something. If you have something on your phone you want to read, please share with us. But next up I have, I'm going to say Ozymandias.
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, in despair. Like, who wrote that? No, it was Shelley, but when I get like a coffee, I tell them my name is Ozymandias, and they usually shorten it to Ozzy. So I've got two things for you today. The first one, well, I'll do the more exciting one second. The first one is this here instrument is called a bull roar, and I printed it on a 3D printer. I'm going to demo it for you. Has anyone heard of this? Oh my gosh, it's the best. Okay. So the bull roar is known to call the storm, and it kind of does anyone hear that? And depending upon the size of the thing and how fast you're doing it, oops. Yeah. Kind of, yeah. So you get the idea. All right. All right. Next one, like it must have been sometime in the 80s. Is anyone alive back then? Okay. So yeah, okay, good. I was walking across an unnamed college campus and some random individual called to me from the door of a van. Most people would keep walking, right? But I was feeling sort of, was like gonna take a risk. So I went over to the van and I actually engaged with this individual who seemed to not be an axe murderer and actually was kind of a friendly person. And one of the things that he sort of introduced me to was this instrument here. Does anyone know what this is? It's called a jaw harp or juice harp, yeah. And I think I had at that time heard of the didgeridoo, and it kind of sounds similar, and it kind of blew my mind. So I'm going to do a little bit of this. I'm not sure what's going to happen here.
Someone asked for Freebird and they just got it, right? I've never heard it on that instrument. I swear to God, when I was putting all the instruments together, I was going to make a joke about not bringing my didgeridoo, so thank you for bringing that into it. But does anyone else like to share anything? We have the hall until about 11 o'clock tonight, so if not, if you'd like to stick around, past CLA President Robert Karatsu and his accompanying band is going to just jam for a little while, so you're welcome to hang around. If you play an instrument and you want to sit in, please come and play with us. If not, thank you for attending. Thank you for, oh, did you have a question? Or what's that? You just signed up?
I'm trying not to check it out.
Woo! Yes! Thank you so much. Rovi, everybody.
Nailed it. All right, I'm not a poet. I'm actually a musician. I play the drums, but I'm not going to do that right now. I just got really excited about you guys talking about the program, and I wanted to say for those who work in public libraries, sometimes it is just that easy to start a program. I actually, when we opened up on, I'm from San Diego Public Library. The City Heights branch was one of the first ones to start opening up on Sundays again after everything shut down in the pandemic and it all slowed down, right? So Sundays were really boring at first because we had no programming. We were only open for like I think it was like 4.5 hours. And my boss at the time, well, she's still my boss, knew that I played instruments. And so she's like, so how are Sundays going? I'm like, honestly, it's super boring. There's nothing to do. Can I please, like, I don't know, can we have a program or something? Can we do something? She's like, yeah, go for it. What do you like? You're good at music, right? Go do that. And I'm like, okay. So the City Heights branch library has a theater connected to it. Big old black box theater. It's on the same sort of property, and it has a big old roll-up gate that opens out to the park. It's kind of a really cool setup, actually. Mostly at the time had been unused until pretty much that, because we had a guy come in and then he got fired. We had someone else come in and she didn't really use the space. So I was like, well, no one's using it on Sunday, maybe I can. And so at first it was kind of a joke. I'm like, yeah, I'll get out there and I'll play the drums or whatever for like 4.5 hours. She's like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, wait, what? Didn't end up doing that, but it did kind of lead to me deciding that maybe we can do some kind of music thing. And so, speaking of, I told her, I'm like, well, what if I could get a band to come in and play? Maybe not every Sunday, but like once a month or whatever. She's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And I'm like, cool. Wait, and I turned to one of the new LA2s, Clark, that started, and I found out just that, like earlier that day, that she played violin and was in a band. I'm like, wait, you have a band, right? Can you like have them come in and do this thing and like do a whole performance about it? And she's like, yeah, okay, cool. And they came over, and then I realized nobody knew anything about sound. And I'm like, oh, cool. So we have like an hour to set up for this event, and nobody knows how to do anything with mics, nobody knows how to run cabling or anything. So I sat down and I learned how to do it in the hour beforehand, and so ended up, my first group that I ended up doing audio for was like, all told, it's like 60 members. They weren't all there, but it was just really cool. And then they were so excited about like, oh, cool, you know how to do this. Hey, actually, we're short a drummer for one of our songs. Like, Kenny told us you know how to play. And I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. And so I jumped in, and then I immediately joined that band, and then realized, wait, this works. Like, we can keep doing this. And so I contacted a bunch of the people in that group, and then found out they had other bands. I'm like, hey, can we set up a thing, and you guys come in, like, we'll do a whole 2 months in the summer or whatever. It's every Sunday. Someone would come in with their local group, and they would perform, and we just have it, you know, we'd have the roll-up door open and be out to the park, out to the public, and it was totally free. I remember my favorite moment, we do have stand-up moments. There was this one guy, never seen him in the library. I think I'd seen him in the park a couple times. And he was listening to the music, and I forgot what we were playing. It might have been, I think it was a Curtis Mayfield song. And we saw him standing on one of the park tables, just like no shirt on, just like vibing so hard at the moment. And I'm like, that's awesome. Let's keep getting more of that. And it just kept growing from there. I mean, it's not super huge, you know, most we've gotten is like, well, we average like 25, 30 people to come and watch, and then every now and then we have this huge mariachi group that gets like 70 people or whatever or more. But we've started branching out and working with like our community partners, and this isn't an ad, I swear. Unless. But yeah, no, we're working with like a music school, and so we use the space, and we're having them think, oh, you guys have violin students or whatever. Well, the band coming up in 2 weeks has a bunch of like violins that are featured, and then I went and started another band because we had a slot to fill, and it turns out it's with that first person who originally told me that they had a group to begin with. She plays violin, so now we have a video game cover band. It's me, her, and 3 other people, and we play at that thing. It's just really cool. Sometimes you just gotta ask, you know. A lot of other staff that I know from other branches, they're terrified of their managers, and sometimes, you know, you just make that little bit of a connection, and cool stuff can happen. Also, I would like to talk to you about your kit later. It looks really cool. Anyway, that's me. They have my contact. I'm also an artist. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's IamRovi. I'm super nervous. I'm going to go away now. Bye.
Thank you, Rovi. Video game cover band. I'm interested. Did anyone who just popped in, is anyone interested in participating in open mic at all? Okay. Okay. I think the open mic portion of the evening has concluded. So the night track is all yours. If you'd like to come stay with us, come play with music with us. Apparently there's a band playing outside. Go get a drink. Come filter back in here. Enjoy your CLA, everybody.
And thank you for attending.